When it comes to space exploration, there's nothing quite as exciting as the discovery of another world. Planets, moons, even dwarf planets, they all beckon us with the promise of adventure and discovery. But if we're just visiting for fun, that's one thing. What if we start to settle down? And what if we start making changes to these alien environments so that we can live there comfortably? That is, what if we terraform other planets? It's a huge ethical question that we must ask ourselves, because while science fiction has been selling this idea as an inevitable next step for humanity for decades, it's really not that simple. Let's talk about it. In case you don't know, terraforming is basically what it sounds like. It's the process of making a planet or other celestial body habitable to Earth life. In practice, this means changing its atmosphere, its temperature, and its environment in general to be similar to Earth's. It's not easy and it's not quick. Some projections have said that terraforming Mars would take several centuries to accomplish, and Mars isn't even the best candidate for terraforming. The main reason scientists are interested in terraforming other worlds is because of the potential for life. If we can make a planet habitable to humans, then we could also potentially bring plants, animals, and even microorganisms with us to create a self-sustaining ecosystem. This is why terraforming falls under the umbrella of planetary protection, which aims to preserve the purity of other worlds by limiting or preventing contamination from Earth. NASA takes this very seriously, so much so that they have an entire planetary protection document laying out the guidelines for planetary protection from biological contamination. The idea is that if we were ever to find evidence of extraterrestrial life, we wouldn't want to have potentially ruined the chance to study it by contaminating the planet with microbes from Earth first. For instance, if we wanted to land on Europa, Jupiter's moon, which scientists think might have a liquid water ocean under its icy surface, we would need to avoid landing in a way that contaminates it with our own life. The document says that for Europa specifically, any mission would have to avoid bringing more than 100 cells of bacteria with it, unless the likelihood of finding native life there is extremely low. So if we can't bring Earth life to other worlds without contaminating them, then shouldn't we just avoid bringing Earth to other worlds? While that's a reasonable concern, scientists think that contamination from Earth might not be the biggest issue when it comes to terraforming. And here's why. There's no such thing as a truly sterile place. Think of all the places on Earth that are completely barren, lifeless wastelands like deserts or tundras. They may not seem like the most hospitable places, but the truth is that they're probably teeming with microbial life. Take the Atacama Desert, for instance. It's often cited as being one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, which makes it a great analogue for what we might expect to find on Mars. There have been some studies done there to understand how well the human body can survive. Exposure to the elements, but this desert is also home to at least 20 species of bacteria. And we know that there are even microorganisms thriving deep within the Antarctic ice in places so cold and dry that only the hardiest extremophiles can survive. Now, consider the fact that we're constantly sending probes and orbiters to places all over the solar system. Even the most carefully planned missions will still end up carrying along hitchhiking microbes. It's just impossible to avoid. Even if we sent a probe to a completely empty world with no life whatsoever, it would still carry traces of Earth's atmosphere and maybe even some actual molecules of oxygen. So given that there's always going to be some trace of Earth wherever we go, it doesn't really matter if we send a probe or a person. We're always going to be contaminating in some sense. And if we want to colonize another planet, that is fundamentally what we're going to have to do. We either need to physically bring the resources necessary to sustain life from Earth, or we need to use the resources on the planet itself to make it hospitable. And both of these methods are already underway. For example, scientists are studying ways to convert Martian CO2 into breathable oxygen, and other researchers are looking at how we might grow food in Martian soil. On the flip side, there's also the possibility that we won't have to do much to planets like Venus. Sure, the atmospheric pressure is a bit high and the temperatures are a little toasty. But if we just gave it a few million years, it seems like the conditions would eventually cool down enough for life to thrive. Ultimately, there is going to come a point where we have to decide just how far we're willing to go to terraform a planet and how much of a world we're willing to change to make it more like Earth. In theory, we should also be asking other civilizations the same question. In 2022, astronomers found signs of phosphine gas in the clouds of Venus, which is here on Earth mostly produced by living things. Scientists don't know if this discovery is a sign of life on Venus. But if it turns out that there is life there, we'll have to think hard about whether we want to mess with it. After all, we don't know how long it took for life to evolve on Venus, nor how complex that life might be. And even if it seems primitive compared to us, who are we to say that it's not advanced in its own right? If we were to encounter a civilization that was advanced enough to have colonized another planet, we should probably ask them what their planetary protection policies are and see if they have any advice for us. The ethics of terraforming aren't just about keeping our own world clean. It's about avoiding the destruction of other worlds. In the mid-90s, researchers had a pretty wild idea to warm up Venus by covering it in mirrors. The logic was that we could bounce sunlight onto the Venusian surface, which would heat it up and cause the atmosphere to expand outwards into space. As it expanded, the atmospheric pressure would decrease and the temperature would cool off until it became Earth-like. Luckily, this plan never got off the ground, both literally and figuratively. But not only does Venus have an incredibly dense atmosphere that would make launching these mirrors very difficult, it would also destroy the world as we know it. By expanding the atmosphere of Venus, we would have irreversibly altered the planet. There would be no going back. Even if we stopped bouncing sunlight onto the surface, it would take tens of millions of years for the atmosphere to collapse back down on itself. And that's assuming that the rest of the planet hadn't changed in that time. And Venus isn't the only planet we could irrevocably alter. Even if we tried to terraform Mars into something like Earth, we would be forever changing the red planet. Mars already has a lot less atmosphere than Earth, which is part of why the planet is so cold. And the process of terraforming would involve adding a lot of mass to the upper atmosphere to help retain heat. But depending on what we use to do this, it could also add a lot of color. One study suggested that we could cover Mars in billions of tiny mirrors to trap heat and increase temperatures. At the same time, scientists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have proposed using genetically engineered algae to absorb carbon dioxide from the Martian atmosphere and release oxygen instead. Both of these methods would irreversibly change the planet's appearance. And to be honest, that might not be the worst thing. Mars isn't Earth, just like Venus isn't Earth, and it's probably not ever going to be. So why do we keep trying to force it into our vision of a second home? Maybe it's because we think that other worlds need to be like Earth for life to thrive. But the truth is that life finds a way. If we can't terraform a planet to be exactly like Earth, that doesn't mean that we could terraform it to be hospitable to life in some shape or form. We've already seen evidence that life can adapt to extreme environments on Earth, so it's not unreasonable to think that if we could stabilize the climate of Mars or Venus, life would find a way to adapt. It might just not look like life on Earth. We may never get to see the kinds of life that might be evolving on other worlds, because terraforming would destroy any native ecosystems that are there. But maybe we should let Venus and Mars be Venus and Mars. Life on Earth has proven that we don't need to be anywhere else to thrive. So why not let the universe be the same way? Thanks for watching this episode of Show Space. If you would like to help support this channel, we have a platform where the people who want to support us as we make this content do that and get some cool perks.